Chapter 16. The Union of the Sword and the Plow. When a woman gets older, a lot of unpleasant things can happen. She might lose her teeth, her hair might turn gray and thin, she could develop shortness of breath, she might become obese or, conversely, extremely skinny. But one thing that won't change is her voice. It'll stay the same as it was when she was a schoolgirl, a bride, or the mistress of some young rake. That's why when Polshchuk knocked on the door and Yelena Stanislavovna asked, "Who's there?" Vorobyaninov flinched. His former lover's voice was exactly as it had been back in '99, before the opening of the Paris exposition. But when Ippolit Matveyevich entered the room, squinting against the light, he saw that there was no trace left of the prosecutor's wife. "How you've changed," he blurted out involuntarily. The old woman threw herself around his neck. "Thank you," she said. "I know what you risked by coming to me. You're still the same generous knight. I won't ask you why you came from Paris. See, I'm not curious." "But I didn't come from Paris at all," Vorobyaninov said, bewildered. "My colleague and I arrived from Berlin," Ostap corrected, nudging Ippolit Matveyevich in the elbow, "but it's not recommended to talk about that." "Oh, I'm so glad to see you," the fortune teller exclaimed. "Come in here into this room. And you, Viktor Mikhailovich, forgive me, but could you come back in half an hour?" "Ah," Ostap remarked, "a first date, difficult moments. Allow me to withdraw as well. You'll permit me to join you, dearest Viktor Mikhailovich." Locksmith trembled with joy. The two men went into Polshchuk's apartment, where Ostap, sitting on a fragment of the gate from house number 5 on Perelishinsky Lane, began to spin phantasmagorical ideas for the bewildered self-employed craftsman with a motor, all aimed at saving the motherland. An hour later, they returned to find the old lovers completely mellowed out. "Do you remember, Ippolit Matveyevich?" Yelena Stanislavovna was saying. "And do you remember, Yelena Stanislavovna?" Ippolit Matveyevich was saying. "I think the psychological moment for dinner has arrived," Ostap thought. Interrupting Ippolit Matveyevich, who was reminiscing about the elections to the city council, he said, "In Berlin, there's a very strange custom. They eat so late that you can't tell if it's an early supper or a late lunch." Yelena Stanislavovna perked up, turned her rabbit-like gaze away from Vorobyaninov, and shuffled off to the kitchen. "Now to act, and to act," Ostap said, lowering his voice to a level of complete illegality. He took Polshchuk by the hand. "The old woman won't let us down. She's reliable." Polshchuk clasped his hands in prayer. "What's your political credo?" "Always," Polshchuk answered enthusiastically. "You're a Kirillovite, I hope." "Yes, sir." Polshchuk stood at attention. "Russia will not forget you," Ostap barked. Ippolit Matveyevich, holding a sweet pastry in his hand, listened to Ostap with bewilderment, but there was no stopping Ostap. He was on a roll. The great schemer felt inspired, that intoxicating state before a better-than-average swindle. He paced the room like a panther. Yelena Stanislavovna found him in this excited state, struggling to carry a samovar from the kitchen. Ostap gallantly leaped to her side, took the samovar from her, and placed it on the table. The samovar whistled. Ostap decided to act. "Madam," he said, "we are happy to see in your person." Didn't know who he was happy to see in Yelena Stanislavovna's person. He had to start again. Of all the flowery phrases of the Tsarist regime, only some "graciously deigned to command" was spinning in his head, but that was out of place, so he began in a businesslike manner. "Strict secret, state secret." Ostap gestured toward Vorobyaninov. "Who do you think this powerful old man is? Don't tell me you couldn't possibly know. He is a giant of thought, the father of Russian democracy, and a person close to the emperor." Ippolit Matveyevich stood to his full, impressive height and looked around in confusion. He didn't understand anything, but knowing from experience that Ostap Bender never did anything without a reason, he remained silent. Everything that was happening caused Polshchuk to tremble. He stood with his chin raised to the ceiling, in the pose of a man preparing to march in a ceremonial parade. Yelena Stanislavovna sat down on a chair, looking at Ostap in fear. "Are there many of ours in the city?" Ostap asked directly. "What's the mood in the city?" "Given the presence of absence," Viktor Mikhailovich said. And he began to explain his troubles in a confused manner. There was the janitor of house number 5, who had become an arrogant boor, and the 3/8-inch shims, and the streetcar, and so on. "Good," Ostap boomed. "Yelena Stanislavovna, with your help we want to contact the best people in the city, whom cruel fate has driven underground. Who can we invite to your place?" "Who can we invite? Maybe Maxim Petrovich and his wife." "Without his wife," Ostap corrected. "Without wives. You will be the only pleasant exception. Who else?" In the discussion which Viktor Mikhailovich actively joined, it turned out that they could invite the same Maxim Petrovich Charishnikov, a former member of the city council, now miraculously counted among the ranks of Soviet employees, Diadiev, the owner of Quickpack, Kislyarski, the chairman of the Odessa Bagel Cooperative, Moscow Crackers, and 2 young men without surnames but completely reliable. "In that case, I ask you to invite them right now to a small meeting under the greatest secrecy." Polshchuk spoke up. I'll run to Maxim Petrovich for Nikish and Vladia, and you, Yelena Stanislavovna, please go to Quickpack and for Kisliarsky. Polshchuk rushed off. The fortune teller looked at Ippolit Matveyevich with reverence and also left. What does this mean? Ippolit Matveyevich asked, puffing out his cheeks. It means, Ostap replied, that you're a backward person. Why? Because, forgive me for the vulgar question, but how much money do you have? What monies? All kinds, including silver and copper. 35 rubles. And with that money, you were going to cover all the expenses of our enterprise. Ippolit Matveyevich was silent. Here's what, dear patron, it seems to me that you understand me. You'll have to be a giant of thought and a person close to the emperor for an hour. Why? Because we need working capital. Tomorrow is my wedding. I'm not a beggar. I want to feast on this momentous day. What should I do? Ippolit Matveyevich groaned. You must be silent. Sometimes, for importance, puff out your cheeks. But this is deception. Who's saying that? Is that Count Tolstoy speaking? Or Darwin? No, I hear it from the mouth of a man who just yesterday was going to break into Gritsitsayeva's apartment at night and steal the poor widow's furniture. Don't hesitate, be silent, and don't forget to puff out your cheeks. Why get involved in such a dangerous business? They could report us. Don't worry about that. I don't go for bad odds. The matter will be conducted in such a way that no one will understand anything. Let's have some tea. While the concessionaires drank and ate, and the parrot cracked sunflower seeds, guests entered the apartment. Nikish and Vladia came with Polshchuk. Viktor Mikhailovich didn't dare introduce the young men to the giant of thought. The young men settled in a corner and began to watch the father of Russian democracy eat cold veal. Nikish and Vladia were fully ripe simpletons. Each of them was about 30 years old. They seemed to really like being invited to the meeting. Former member of the city council, Charishnikov, a stout old man, shook Ippolit Matveyevich's hand for a long time and looked him in the eyes. Under Ostap's supervision, the old-timers of the city began to exchange memories. Giving them a chance to talk, Ostap turned to Charishnikov. What regiment did you serve in? Charishnikov puffed. I, so to speak, didn't serve at all because, being entrusted with the confidence of society, I passed through elections. Are you a nobleman? Yes, I was. You, I hope, remain one now. Hold on. Your help will be needed. Did Polshchuk tell you? The West will help us. The public opinion is the stopping point. Complete secrecy of the organization. Attention. Ostap pushed Polshchuk away from Nikish and Vladia and asked with genuine severity. What regiment did you serve in? You'll have to serve the fatherland. Are you noblemen? Very good. The West will help us. Hold on. Complete secrecy of contributions, that is, of the organization. Attention. Ostap was on a roll. Things seemed to be improving. Introduced by Yelena Stanislavovna to the owner of Quickpack, Ostap took him aside, suggested that he hold on, inquired what regiment he had served in, and promised the assistance of foreign countries and complete secrecy of the organization. The first feeling of the owner of Quickpack was the desire to escape from the conspiratorial apartment as soon as possible. He considered his firm too solid to enter into a risky business. But looking at Ostap's agile figure, he hesitated and began to think. What if, however, it all depends on how it's presented? A friendly conversation at the tea table livened up. The initiated sacredly guarded the secret and talked about the latest city news. Last to arrive was citizen Kisliarsky, who, not being a nobleman and never having served in the Guards regiments, immediately understood the state of affairs from a brief conversation with Ostap. Hold on, Ostap said instructively. Kisliarsky promised. You, as a representative of private capital, cannot remain deaf to the groans of the motherland. Kisliarsky sadly sympathized. Do you know who's sitting there? Ostap asked, pointing to Ippolit Matveyevich. Of course, Kisliarsky replied. That's Mr. Vorobyaninov. This, said Ostap, is a giant of thought, the father of Russian democracy, a person close to the emperor. At best 2 years with strict isolation, Kisliarsky thought, beginning to tremble. Why did I come here? The secret union of the sword and the plow, Ostap whispered ominously. 10 years flashed through Kisliarsky's mind. However, you can leave, but we, I warn you, have long arms. I'll show you, you son of a bitch, Ostap thought. I won't let you go for less than 100 rubles. Kisliarsky turned marble. Just today he had such a tasty and peaceful dinner, ate chicken gizzards, broth with nuts, and knew nothing about the terrible union of the sword and the plow. He stayed. Long arms made an unfavorable impression on him. Citizens, Ostap said, opening the meeting. Life dictates its own laws, its own cruel laws. I will not tell you about the purpose of our meeting. It is known to you. The goal is sacred. We hear groans from everywhere. From all corners of our vast country they cry out for help. We must extend a helping hand, and we will extend it. Some of you serve and eat bread with butter. Others are engaged in the waste trade and eat sandwiches with caviar. Both sleep in their beds and cover themselves with warm blankets. Only small children, homeless, are without supervision. These flowers of the street, or as the proletarians of intellectual labor express it, flowers on the asphalt, deserve a better fate. We, gentlemen of the jury, must help them, and we, gentlemen of the jury, will help them. The speech of the great schemer aroused various feelings among the listeners. Polshchuk did not understand his new friend, the young guardsman. What children, he thought, why children? Ippolit Matveyevich didn't even try to understand anything. He had long since given up on everything and sat silently, puffing out his cheeks. Yelena Stanislavovna was saddened. Nikish and Vladia looked devotedly at Ostap's blue vest. The owner of Quickpack was extremely pleased. Beautifully composed, he decided, you can give money under such a sauce. In case of success, honor. If it doesn't work out, it's my 16th concern. I help the children, and that's the end of it. Charishnikov exchanged a significant glance with Diadiev, and, giving credit to the conspiratorial dexterity of the speaker, continued to roll bread balls on the table. Kisliarsky was in seventh heaven. A golden head, he thought. It seemed to him that he had never loved homeless children so much as at that moment. Comrades, Ostap continued, immediate help is needed. We must snatch the children from the tenacious paws of the street, and we will snatch them from there. Let's help the children. Let's remember that children are the flowers of life. I invite you to make your contributions right now and help the children. Only the children and no one else. Do you understand me? Ostap took out a certificate and a receipt book from his side pocket. I will ask you to make contributions. Ippolit Matveyevich will confirm my authority. Ippolit Matveyevich puffed up and bowed his head. Here, even the simple-minded Nikish and Vladia and the ingenious locksmith himself understood the secret essence of Ostap's allegories. In order of seniority, gentlemen, said Ostap, let's start with the respected Maxim Petrovitch. The respected Maxim Petrovitch fidgeted and gave 30 rubles at most. I'll give more in better times, he declared. Better times will come soon, said Ostap. However, this does not apply to the homeless children whom I currently represent. Nikish and Vladia gave 8 rubles. Not enough, young men. The young men blushed. Polshchuk ran home and brought 50. Bravo, Hussar, said Ostap. For a lone hussar with a motor, this is enough for the first time. What will the merchant say? Diadiev and Kisliarsky bargained and complained about equalization for a long time. Ostap was implacable. In the presence of Ippolit Matveyevich himself, I consider these conversations superfluous. Ippolit Matveyevich bowed his head. The merchants donated 200 rubles each to the children. In total, Ostap exclaimed, 488 rubles. 12 rubles are not enough for an even count. Yelena Stanislavovna, who had been holding out for a long time, went to the bedroom and brought out the sought-after 12 rubles in an old reticule. The rest of the meeting was crumpled and less solemn. Ostap began to frolic. Yelena Stanislavovna completely softened. The guests gradually dispersed, respectfully saying goodbye to the organizers. You will be notified separately about the day of the next meeting, Ostap said in farewell, the strictest secrecy. The matter of helping children must be kept secret. This, by the way, is in your personal interests. At these words, Kisliarsky wanted to give another 50 rubles, but no longer come to any meetings. He barely restrained himself from this impulse. Well, said Ostap, let's move on. You, Ippolit Matveyevich, I hope, will take advantage of Yelena Stanislavovna's hospitality and spend the night at her place. By the way, it's also useful for us to separate for a while for the sake of conspiracy, and I'm gone. Ippolit Matveyevich desperately winked at Ostap, but he pretended not to notice and went out into the street. After walking a block, he remembered that he had 500 honestly earned rubles in his pocket. Cabby, he shouted, take me to the Phoenix. That's possible, said the cabby. He slowly drove Ostap to the closed restaurant. What's this, closed? On the occasion of May Day. Ah, damn them, and there's plenty of money and nowhere to have fun. Well then, go to Plekhanov Street, do you know it? Ostap decided to go to his bride. What was this street called before? I don't know. Where to go, and I don't know. Nevertheless, Ostap ordered to go and search. For an hour and a half, they drove around the empty night city, questioning night watchmen and policemen. One policeman puffed for a long time and finally reported that Plekhanov was none other than the former Gubernatorskaya. Well, Gubernatorskaya, I know Gubernatorskaya well. I've been driving to Gubernatorskaya for 25 years. Well, go to Gubernatorskaya. They arrived at Gubernatorskaya, but it turned out to be not Plekhanov, but Karl Marx. Embittered, Ostap resumed the search for the lost street named after Plekhanov, and so all night the poor madman, wherever he turned his steps, could not find the street named after Plekhanov. Dawn palely illuminated the face of the rich sufferer, who had never managed to have fun in the Soviet city. Take me to the Sorbonne, he shouted. Also, cabby, you don't know Plekhanov. Mansion of the widow Gritsitseva shone. At the head of the wedding table sat the marriage king, the son of a Turkish citizen. He was elegant and drunk. The guests were noisy. Bride was no longer young. She was at least 35 years old. Nature had generously endowed her. There was everything: watermelon breasts, a short but expressive nose, painted cheeks, a powerful back of the head, and boundless buttocks. She adored her new husband and was very afraid of him. Therefore, she called him not by his name and not even by his patronymic, which she never found out, but by his last name, Comrade Bender. Ippolit Matveyevich was sitting on the cherished chair again. Throughout the wedding dinner, he jumped on the chair to feel the solid. Sometimes he succeeded. Then everyone present liked him, and he frantically began to shout bitter. Ostap gave speeches, and toasts all the time. They drank to public education and the irrigation of Uzbekistan. After that, the guests began to disperse. Ippolit Matveyevich lingered in the hallway and whispered to Bender. "So don't delay, they're there." "You inquisitor," replied the drunk Ostap. "Wait for me at the hotel. Don't go anywhere. I can come any minute. Pay the bill at the hotel, so that everything is ready. Adieu, Field Marshal. Wish me a good night." Ippolit Matveyevich wished and went to the Sorbonne to worry. At 5 in the morning, Ostap appeared with a chair. Ippolit Matveyevich was pierced. Ostap put the chair in the middle of the room and sat on it. "How did you manage it?" Vorobyaninov finally uttered. "Very simple, family style. The widow is sleeping and seeing a dream. It was a pity to wake her up. Don't wake her at dawn. Alas, I had to leave my beloved a note. I'm leaving with a report to Novokopersk. Don't wait for dinner, your gopher." And I grabbed the chair in the dining room. There's no streetcar at these morning hours. I rested along the way. Ippolit Matveyevich rushed to the chair with a gurgle. "Quiet," said Ostap. "We need to act without noise." He took out pliers from his deep pockets, and the work began to boil. "Did you lock the door?" Ostap asked. Pushing away the impatient Vorobyaninov, Ostap carefully opened the chair, trying not to damage the English chintz with flowers. "There's no such chintz now. We need to save it. Commodity hunger, nothing can be done." All this brought Ippolit Matveyevich to extreme irritation. "Ready," said Ostap quietly. He lifted the covers and began to rummage between the springs with both hands. A Venus Ijitsa appeared on his forehead. "Well," Ippolit Matveyevich repeated in different ways. "Well, well." "Well, well," Ostap replied irritably. "One chance against 11, and this chance." He rummaged well in the chair and finished. "And this chance is not ours yet." He rose to his full height and began to clean his knees. Ippolit Matveyevich rushed to the chair. There were no diamonds in the second one. Ippolit Matveyevich's arms drooped, but Ostap was still cheerful. "Now our chances have increased." He walked around the room. "Nothing, this chair cost the widow more than it cost us." Ostap took out a gold brooch with glass beads, a puffed gold bracelet, half a dozen gilded spoons, and a tea strainer from his side pocket. Ippolit Matveyevich, in grief, did not even realize that he had become an accomplice in an ordinary theft. "Vulgar thing," Ostap remarked, "but you must agree that I could not leave my beloved woman without leaving any memory of her. However, we should not waste time. This is only the beginning. The end is in Moscow, and the State Furniture Museum is not a widow. It will be more difficult there." The companions stuffed the fragments of the chair under the bed, and counting the money, there were 610 rubles, together with donations for the children, drove to the station for the Moscow train. They had to drive through the whole city in a cab. On Kuprativnaya, they saw Polshchuk running along the sidewalk like a timid antelope. He was being chased by the janitor of house number 5 on Perelishinsky Lane. Turning the corner, the concessionaires managed to notice that the janitor had caught up with Viktor Mikhailovich and began to beat him. Polshchuk shouted help and bore. Near the station itself on Gusish, they had to wait for a funeral procession. On a freight platform, shuddering, rode a coffin, followed by a completely exhausted Varfolomych. The tricky grandmother died just in the year when he stopped making insurance contributions. Before the departure of the train, they sat in the toilet, fearing a meeting with their beloved woman. The train carried the friends to the noisy center. The friends pressed against the window. The cars rushed over Gusish. Suddenly Ostap roared and grabbed Vorobyaninov by the bicep. "Look, look," he shouted. "Quickly, Alkan, you son of a bitch." Ippolit Matveyevich looked down. Under the embankment, a burly mustachioed young man was pulling a cart loaded with a red Fiskarmania and 5 window frames. The cart was being pushed by a shy-looking citizen in a mouse-colored sweatshirt. The sun broke through the clouds. The crosses of the churches shone. Ostap, laughing, leaned out of the window and shouted, "Pashka, are you going to the flea market?" Pasha Emelyevich raised his head, but saw only the buffers of the last car and worked his legs even harder. "Did you see?" Ostap asked joyfully. "Beauty, that's how people work." Ostap patted the saddened Vorobyaninov on the back. "Nothing, Dad, don't be discouraged. The meeting continues. Tomorrow evening we're in Moscow."